I do see a question. If we want to segue to the tight end, we can.
Okay.
Do you want to take this latest question in the chat here, Mark?
Sure.
From SBuck22, what incoming tight end do you favor for early playing time? Excellent discussion that we could have on this, because I think Addison Estringa. I'm higher on Addison than I am on Cale, but I am not Brian Ferentz. I consider Brian Ferentz to be pretty darn knowledgeable. I would think he's pretty darn knowledgeable about the tight end position, and he's done well there. I mean, say what you want about him as coordinator, he's had some good tight ends since he's been tight ends coach. I would say Addison Estringa, as I recall from his tape, Addison, big kid, really good hands, and so is Cale Vanderbush. Cale Vanderbush, both those guys are receivers with tight end bodies. Cale's got what I remember seeing on tape with Cale is he's going to have to really work on his route running when he gets to this level, and certainly each guy. I mean, the ability to block as a tight end is so important wherever you go, but especially at Iowa. I would give the nod to Addison right now. If we're talking about non-freshmen, Elijah Yelverton is still here. He's the only other scholarship tight end, Mark, besides Estringa, Sanderson, and of course the two starters, LaPorta and Lachey. So we'll see. I mean, the clock is ticking on these guys, and Yelverton, he's got the body, Mark. He's 6'5", 250, and he's just he'll be a sophomore next year. Will Steven Stylianos commit here? That's, we don't know. Again, he did visit, so you would have to think there's some serious interest there. I'm excited to see Addison Estringa, so underrated. I don't know if you have his profile in front of you, Mark, but I believe he was a 2-star. Was he a 3-star? Maybe a 3-star? I know he's really low. I mean, he was in the thousands. We're talking thousands as far as rankings on Rivals.
69th rated tight end in the country, and not rated nationally. Doesn't have a figure next to his name, so he's in the thousands somewhere.
Yeah, so
3-star. Vanderbush, on the other hand, is the 40th rated tight end. So I'm just a bit curious, and you gave us your reasoning there. So you're basing this on watching your own film and then conversations with people, and what you've picked up. That you are higher on the lower rated player.
Oh, you're setting me up to get absolutely destroyed on this one, Mark. Yes, I am guessing. I'm making an educated guess based on the limited amount of tape that I've looked at. For the record, I have nothing against Cale Vanderbush. Excited he's a Hawk. I want to make that clear. But and I'm probably a bit biased because we did a really good interview with Addison Estringa, which I don't think we've released yet. I don't think. I have to look back. I get my mind mixed up. But he's just he's obviously doubted by a lot of people. I mean, when you're ranked that low in your class, I mean, you're going to have a chip on your shoulder. And to be able to come to Iowa and play tight end at Iowa, we've seen this story before, Mark. And so, again, maybe Vanderbush will evolve. I just think Estringa looks like more of your typical Iowa tight end that develops into kind of the Sam LaPorta type. Whereas Vanderbush, I think he's closer maybe to 6'6", maybe. I could be wrong on that. Maybe he's just 6'5", but both guys have a chance to develop. They're coming to, in my opinion, the best university to develop as a tight end, and it's not a real deep room. Iowa, of course, lost Josiah Meeman. He heads over to play for David Yost at Florida International as a tight end, which I find sort of intriguing. So they lose him, and the room is just not real deep. And so these guys will have an opportunity, especially if we can get in on some special teams action. And Iowa, let's not forget, they do have some developing walk-ons, one being Bryce Schulte, who played some last year, number 48 out of Cedar Rapids. So he's an Iowa kid. I could see him getting some playing time as well, depending on where these young guys' development is. And then they got a couple of Johnny Pascuzzi's, another guy who's on the roster as a walk-on, Andrew Lynch from West Des Moines. But it's just not a real deep room right now, and it gives these freshmen an opportunity, conceivably, if they get neither of those guys are enrolling early. So we're talking about spring previews. They're not going to be here this spring. But once they get there in the fall, they have an opportunity to play maybe somewhat early. It's harder as a tight end, Mark, as you know, to play early than, say, being a wide receiver or running back. But again, it's not a real deep room.
Yeah, dual responsibility along the offensive line, of course. Not that wide receivers aren't asked to block, but it's a one-on-one matchup in which they are not engaged in traffic on the defensive line. Corey, you had made the comment a few weeks ago that Sam LaPorta may be the best tight end returning in America. Caught 53 passes, 6 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards last season. I just pulled up a article by Pro Football Focus where they have ranked the top 10 tight ends returning to college football in 2022. Where do you believe they have Sam LaPorta ranked?
3.
10.
Well,
I knew that would catch you.
You know, I don't
Not
know.
that they're right.
So who are the other ones? I'm curious.
Okay, here's your top 10. Number 1, Brock Bowers, Georgia. 2, Michael Mayer, Notre Dame. Number 3 is Eric Gilbert, Georgia. Didn't play a down last season. Number 4, but he's a 5-star tight end.
Sure.
Number 4, Brant Kuth, Utah. Saw him for the first time really in the Rose Bowl myself. Number 5, Jaheim Bell, South Carolina. Number 6, Eric All, Michigan. 7.
Who's that last one from Michigan?
Eric All, Michigan.
Did he play a lot last year?
He played. He didn't catch many passes. I'm guessing. I don't see his stats here. I'm going to guess before I look up his numbers. He caught 15 to 18 passes last year. At number 7, we have Dalton Kincaid, Utah. So they've got 2 Utah tight ends.
Utah U, or tight end.
Number 8 is Austin Stogner, South Carolina, who played for Oklahoma last season, now with South Carolina. Number 9 is Marshawn Ford of Louisville. And 10 is LaPorta, Iowa.
Whatever. I guarantee you LaPorta will be drafted probably ahead of 7 of those guys, Mark, at least.
The only guy that I believe for sure is better than LaPorta is Bowers at Georgia.
And I know nothing about him.
Yeah, he was exceptional. He was a borderline 5-star out of California. And because Georgia already had 2 5-stars in Eric Gilbert and Darnell Washington, he wasn't supposed to play. He got on the field due to injuries and suspensions and whatever was going on with Gilbert. And he had a remarkable year. And just to watch him tear up the likes of Alabama and Michigan, yeah, he's exceptional. But and Michael Mayer of Notre Dame, he's a tremendous tight end.
Yeah. Well, I think is Sam LaPorta. I mean, I think Sam LaPorta is right there with it. I certainly don't have the knowledge nationwide that you do, Mark, but Sam LaPorta basically catches everything that comes his way. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a top 3 round pick next year. And there was no real, I mean, there was some talk, speculation, but there was really no doubt he was coming back. I think he's locked and loaded. He's ready to go. I think he's got an opportunity to break some records this year. I could be wrong, but, and that's saying something too. If he breaks some records at Iowa, that means he had a big year. But here's the reason why I think that could happen, Mark, because you see how reliant Spencer Petras is on Sam LaPorta. So even if Spencer improves a little bit, I see them being very heavily. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Sam LaPorta doesn't break records because I don't think that's a good sign for the offense. But you know that he sometimes locks in on Sam LaPorta and fails to look downfield. So I hope I'm wrong on that, but I think LaPorta is going to have a huge year. And Luke Lachey, we don't know what to make of Luke Lachey right now. I mean, that's another thing that could take away from LaPorta's numbers. If Lachey can really develop, because he proved last year that he's an exceptional pass catcher. And he's probably the next in line, the next in waiting, so to speak. And now that Josiah Meehan's gone, I mean, it could potentially be Yelverton and Lachey next year. Unless Stylianos comes here. If Steven Stylianos comes here, then him and Lachey would be tight ends 1 and 2 in 2023. But it's, again, kind of like running back, not a real deep room. But I like the personnel they have there. And certainly all of these guys, if you're going to be playing at the next level, are going to have to improve run blocking. And again, I give Brian Ferentz a benefit of the doubt. He knows how to teach that. I have no problem with Brian Ferentz teaching tight ends here at Iowa. And I think you have an opportunity to have a big year, whether you like it or not. At the bottom line is Iowa needs to get receivers more involved. Even Don Patterson has said that. That's one of the big things Don keeps saying about the offense. You got to get receivers more involved. It's just, I mean, it's ridiculous. And I would hope that I was figuring out how to do that. And that would, again, if you can succeed in doing that, that would take away some of the production, one would think, from the tight ends position. And that's not, that's not a surprise to anybody. I think the only exception to the rule that you probably see in the league would be Kansas City. They have exceptional production from Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman. You go on list, and yet they have an exceptional tight end in Travis Kelce. But you look at San Francisco, they've got Ayuk and they've got some guys that produce it as wideouts, but George Kittle is the one real weapon they have. And so Iowa, that's what I expect with LaPorta. Unless something changes, Sam LaPorta is the one guy that Spencer Petras seems comfortable throwing to right now.
Speaking of Kittle, I looked at his numbers at Iowa not long ago today in forming this, just looking at the current room and then just thinking, George Kittle. What did I really know about George Kittle at Iowa? I was aware of him.
He didn't do much, Mark.
He caught 20 and 22 passes his last 2 years.
He was hurt a lot, maybe a bit underutilized, but he was hurt a lot. He came out of nowhere. I mean, I think he was drafted maybe 5th round. Was he drafted 4th round, maybe?
I think 5th.
I mean, you look at hype. Tony Moeaki had a lot more hype than George Kittle. Noah Fant had a lot more hype than George Kittle. So, these guys can come out of nowhere. And if you look at a picture of George Kittle when he was in high school, I mean, that kid did not look. He looks like a WWE wrestler now, and I think he's probably going to be after his pro career is over. It's amazing what Iowa can do, and it's an opportunity. I see this comment from Darrell MVP. Can we address this, Mark? He says, "Here we go with the ultimate." Here we go. And I'm gonna. Darrell MVP is one of our loyal listeners. I know he's one of your loyal listeners as well, Mark. But I'm gonna rip him for this because this is one of those ultimatums that I can't stand when I hear people make. He says Brock is the best tight end in the country. It's not close. He's better than Kyle Pitts. Do you have any response to that, Mark?
Well, I have a response to anyone who makes that claim about any player, just because we all have our blind spots. We all have just our limitations. I believe that Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the country, but I would never make the statement that there's no question he's the best tight end in the country, because I do think there is room for argument and debate there. I don't think that it's a slam dunk. It's not even close. He impressed for a national championship team in big moments. And it was not expected. So there was a wow factor because of the unexpectancy. Not that he wasn't supposed to be a big player coming out of high school, but he wasn't supposed to be one immediately, was not supposed to be counted on. So, yeah, that's my only. People tend to be not real balanced or objective with their statements. They tend to go to one end of the spectrum. That's just human nature.
Well, as you know, Darrell MVP is an SEC fan, so that's all. That's my only point I was going to make. I mean, if you're a Big Ten fan, you're probably going to make that statement about the kid from Michigan or maybe even Sam LaPorta. So, but you're right. I do remember Bauer. He probably is a bit better than Kyle Pitts. That's a bit, I don't know about that one.